After 5 years of creating exciting business content with amazing businesses from around the world, Savvy is now creating a new video series entitled Heartbeat of the World. This series will feature experts from around the globe. We will highlight and discuss some of the greatest challenges facing the U.S. and the world. Co-create with us and find out more at bit.ly/savvypatron.
Savvy Business Radio runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.
Today we're joined by Dr. Susan Edelman, MD. She has over 30 years' experience practicing as a therapist specializing in women issues. Today she shares her latest multi-award winning book, Be Your Own Brand of Sexy, A New Sexual Revolution for Women. She helps single women reclaim their power in business and in life. Find out more about Dr. Susan and her new book at BeYourOwnBrandOfSexy.com. Hi, Dr. Susan. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio and our Heartbeat of the World series. I'm so grateful to have you here today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with you. I'm excited.
Well, I'm super excited. You wrote a wonderful book called Be Your Own Brand of Sexy. And I where was this book when I was dating? I could have seriously needed it. But what's awesome about your book is it doesn't just apply to dating, I found that often we allow ourselves not to live our best, greatest, sexy life. And we get in the way of what we think we should do or be. And you know, because as your book said, there's not a lot of playbooks out there. Since the feminist revolution, where we're now able to get jobs and make our own rules, there really are no rules. There's no playbook. So we're kind of, you know, going about trying to figure out, like, what do we do? How do we get accepted? What works, what doesn't work? And we're kind of just playing it by ear. But your book really helps kind of find a way to make some rules for ourselves. So share with the audience a little bit about your background, what brought you to doing what you're doing and helping people with their dating lives and writing your awesome book, Be Your Own Brand of Sexy.
Thank you. I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm in private practice, and every day I listen to people tell me how they don't get what they want, whether it's with men in dating or in business or with their relationships. So this is my focus every day. And then this friend of mine's daughter, one of my dearest friends' daughter, went off to college, and she called me for dating advice and said, Susan, all the guys are asking me to come over and hang out. What does that mean? And, you know, I was supposed to know the answers. I'm the expert, and I really wasn't sure. So as it turned out, she went to a college where there wasn't much dating. The guys didn't want to take girls out to dinner and get to know them. It was a hookup culture. And she wasn't interested in casual sex. So it really, she was disappointed, and it kind of broke my heart because I loved college dating and she was going to miss out. And I started to wonder what had happened to courtship and romance. And this isn't what we had in mind with the women's movement and sexual revolution. We thought women would be treated better when we were seen as equals, not that men would take casual sex for granted. So, you know, when she said, Susan, you have to do something about this, I realized that I was seeing this in my practice as well, women who were letting themselves be taken for granted, and that someone really did need to do something, and I was in a unique position to do it.
Wow. And I really loved it because, as we said prior to the interview, this just doesn't play part into our dating lives, but also into our relationship with men, but also into our business lives. I find that women in the business world are often taken for granted. I told someone recently on the show that I went into this business and most of the top executives were men, and there was one woman, and she would do everything, you know, that the lowly workers were doing. There was a problem with the computer one day, and she got down on her hands and knees under the desk and trying to fix the computer. I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? And the men are just looking at her with her butt up in the air going, And I'm like, they expect it of her because she's a woman. And I'm like, but you're an executive. Get off the floor, damn it. But, you know, how have we gotten to this place where we don't seem to know the rules and we don't know how to be treated as equals, really, and how to be treated with respect? How did we get to this point?
I think we're still raised as people pleasers to a large extent.
Mhm.
And so I think that's kind of in our wiring. And so we're thinking more external, how do we please somebody else, or how do we compete with somebody else, instead of thinking, what do I want? What's good for me? Who
Mhm.
am I, and how do I get what I want? A lot of women are even conflicted about having strategies to get what they want. Oh no, is that manipulative? And do we deserve it? It's
Mhm.
a real conflict, I think.
Yeah, and it's a real conflict, I think, because also the male counterpart has come to see it as, hey, I can get the sex and as they call it, the milk before the cow, or before whatever it's called. It's like, hey, if I can get sex and not have to do anything for it or have to woo a woman, why would I? And I could totally see that. But how do you even begin to change the now social structure of where men kind of expect us to have hookups, and how do we change that?
I think it's a great question. So I think first we all have to kind of tune into ourselves more than we are, because our culture puts so much pressure on women to be sexy and sexual that we don't realize that real power isn't being sexy or having lots of sex. It's really about being treated well by men and other people. And until we really integrate that that's what real power is, it's protecting ourselves. It's not going out with dates with guys who are going to be insensitive or completely take us for granted. And I think that's true in business too. Your example is perfect, right?
Mhm.
How do you go, well, what's the best thing for me in this situation? Even if they want me to fix the computer, even if they want me to have casual sex, what's the best thing for me? So tuning out society to some extent kind of comes first. And that's what being your own brand of sexy is, figuring out what you want, what works for you as an individual, and how you're going to get there, what strategies you're going to use to get there.
Wow. I love this. And what I really got from this now, in the past couple of years, I look back, I've been out of the dating scene now for over 11 years. I'm blessed to have my beautiful life partner, Brian, in my life. But before that, I was struggling just like a lot of other women. And even so now, if it's not in the dating life, it's still in the business life. And what's really brought me to full circle to now being more respected by men and women is really living authentically, not worrying, as you said, about what other people think outside, but how do I feel inside? And just living outwardly what I truly feel. We're not worrying about what people are thinking, or do people find it acceptable? Am I pleasing them? And as you said, it's really hard for women to do that. But I find now people find me more sexually attractive, and as a woman more, now that I'm just living authentically. Have you found that to be the case as well?
I absolutely think that's true. And that's why I wrote this book, because it affects women and men in all kinds of different areas of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really taken back, and I hadn't thought about this because I haven't been a kid in quite some time, but how much of our society is being sexualized that we didn't think about. Like in the 50s and 60s, you would never see some of the commercials we see on TV. And now we have like little 13-year-olds like, come hither. And I'm like, what is that? You're selling shoes? Really? And you've got these 30-year-olds who have no clue what kind of faces they've gotten them to contort into. And they're like looking at someone and they're like dripping with this guy hanging off of them. And I'm like, what is that? They're 13. And so, the kids and teenagers are getting, or especially girls, are getting really conflicted messages of like, what am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to go out there and sleep with every guy? Or am I supposed to be sexualized at all times? How do you begin to work through that crazy messages we're getting everywhere?
Well, I think we need to educate the world. We need to spread the message that this is not healthy. And I think, it's affecting us in terms of fat shaming. 90% of women are unhappy with how they look. It leads, for girls, it leads to depression and poor self-esteem and eating disorders. It's really very bad for our culture. But we've got this really messed up culture because we've got like beauty people who are trying to sell us beauty products in magazines. So the women's magazines want us to be more confident. They put articles in there about that. But then the message is also, you need these beauty products to look better. And we also see it with in movies and television, right? And most of these producers are men. So they're producing things because sex sells. They want to sell tickets. They're not doing it to empower women. So women have to start taking our power back. And a lot of men are unhappy with this situation too. So we all have to join a sisterhood instead of competing with each other to be the best sex objects we can be.
Yeah, I love that, because I had spoken to a guy not too long ago. He said he feels frustrated in the dating life as well, and in business, because he said, I don't even know how to treat women. I'm scared if I open up the door, they're going to yell at me and say, hey, I'm a woman. You treat me as equal. Don't hold the door for me. But hey, I was raised to be a proper gentleman, but it's like I don't know when to be a gentleman and when not to be. And so actually, I think this conversation, as you said, between women, for us to not beat each other down, because sadly, in the business world, I found that who beat other women down are not men usually, but other women, which is really, really sad. So it's a conversation not between just women, but I think between both sexes, to realize that, we're not better or less than, we're different, but that doesn't mean we can't each be treated with respect and start to change the rules for all of us to be happy in business and in life.
Absolutely. I mean, this would be a great conversation on a date, right? I don't know whether to open the door for you or offer to pay for your dinner,
Yeah.
What are you comfortable with, right?
Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned that in your book. You said one size doesn't fit all. And some people were feeling like, I don't feel like having casual sex. It doesn't feel right for me. And then the society is saying I should. Well, really look at what you're feeling. And if you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. What I felt, and I was very constrained about it, is I chose not to have sex until I found my life partner. But it was like when you started hanging out with someone and dating them, they're like, after 2 days, why aren't we going there? Why aren't we having the deed? And I'm like, well, I'm waiting to get married. And one guy said, I ain't going to propose to you. I just met you 3 days ago. I'm like, I don't want you to propose to me. I want you to court me. But what does that look like? We don't even know what that means anymore. What does courting mean? How long are we supposed to wait? And so, I mean, it's really, really complicated things to get into. And where do you see us? How do we even begin to broach this? Do we start with our teenagers? Where do we start?
We can start anywhere. We can start with our teenagers, but we have to understand it ourselves to some extent to be able to help somebody else with it. So, I think this is the perfect situation because it's so common in dating. And, I think for women to be able to start to say to men, I'm just not comfortable with casual sex.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to bring up marriage or I'm waiting for marriage, right? Because that can be scary to people, but I'm just not comfortable with that. Yeah. So, do you, are they even interested in a commitment? And I think so many men, are thinking there's a 3-date rule, and the women do too. They feel pressured by this 3-date rule that is completely ridiculous. Because how can you know someone well enough in 3 dates to really know if you can trust them or want to get that intimate with them? But a lot of women feel like, I better decide. So I think if we start there with, this is not what I'm comfortable with, and I'm trying to figure out what's right for me as a person.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned that, because usually I wouldn't get to the 3rd date, because once I let them know I wasn't planning to have casual sex with them, they're like, okay, later I'll go on to the next person. But I think as a society, until we make the general rule that I'm not comfortable with just giving myself out to someone I don't know, and I really want to let them know that I want commitment or a desire for them to get to know me better, that we're going to keep getting this. And for me, I mean, some of the guys, like that guy I told you about, he got down on one knee and said, I ain't proposing to you. I don't know you. I said, but the funny thing is, I didn't even want marriage. I just wanted a life partner. I wanted a partner, a real, best friend, that I devote my life to, both of us, not so much a marriage down the aisle. Like I didn't see that was necessary. And so guys are confused. I don't get it. You don't want marriage, but you don't want to have sex. I don't get it. What do you want? I'm like, well, what I want is a best friend. I want a partner in life. And it was kind of confusing for some of the dates I went on for them to understand that, until I found Brian. And the blessing about finding my life partner is I found him on Match, and he was having his own health issues and didn't feel comfortable dating. And he said, I just want to chat online with women I think are exciting and intellectual. And so we carried on for 4 months letter writing, which is, an old kind of courtship of getting to know someone through letter writing. So for 4 months, we wrote over 200 letters back and forth. And it was fabulous. After our first anniversary of actually being together, I made a printout and put it into a book. I bounded it for him. But I mean, it was a really nice way getting back to that old fashioned, kind of courtship thing. And, you talk about that in your book a little bit, that, it's kind of like modern women are like, I don't want to go back to the old ideals of courtship, because then I'm going to be property. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be betrothed to a guy that my parents decided for me. I want to go forward and be the modern woman. So how do you add that courtship without losing your modern feminist power? We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsor, Neopost. Think about all the time small businesses spend to process and send mail and packages. If we spend just 15 minutes a day doing it, that's more than 7 full days a year focused on mailing and shipping. That's crazy! I recently spoke to Neopost, and they told me one of the smartest things to start doing today to save time and money is to use the IS-280 postage meter to handle all our mail processing without ever leaving my office. The IS-280 weighs, then automatically tells me what postage amount my mail or package needs. Not only do I pay 6% less to send first-class mail, but time is also saved by not having to run to the post office for postage. The IS-280 truly lets me spend more time managing business and less time managing mail. For a limited time, our listeners can get up to 6 months free by using the promo code SAVVY. Visit neopost280.com/savvy and enter your zip code to see if you qualify, followed by the promo code SAVVY to lock in 6 months free.
See, I don't see any of this as separate from feminism, but I think that the way we've interpreted feminism is a little bit rigid in some ways. Like, gee, we can't ask men for help, or we can't, we have to say something if something's bothering us. So I think we're sort of translating it in this way that is too rigid, because we're all individuals. And I think feminism is more about doing what's right for you than following some feminist script about what you think the proper way to go about it is.
Yeah. I like that, Susan. And you mentioned in your book, too, that women have trouble, asking for help because they're like, well, then I'm going to look weak. And I've done that. I've been on the plane where I actually, your book mentioned it, but I've actually done it. No, I got it. Go away. And they're like, they're trying to help me. And I'm like, no, I got this. And, once I even recall, I was on a trip to Germany, and they were a little boat because we went off to this island called Helgoland. It was a whole island full of sheep. I don't know why, but they raised a bunch of sheep on there. So the island was so shallow that we had to take a teeny boat from the big boat over to the island. So they got this little boat and they put us all on it, but the men were standing there helping the women onto the boat. And when it came my turn to get on the little boat, I pushed both guys away, like, I got this. And then one of the guys fell into the water. And everyone was like looking at me like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And they had to help him in. I'm like sitting here all embarrassed, like, I can't believe I just did that. But yeah, I totally get what you're talking about, that we've totally confused this message of strength and feminism to actually kind of make us hurt us and make us kind of weaker, because in that instance, everyone on the ship was not too happy with me.
I think we still feel like we've got something to prove, that's where this is coming from. Like, we don't deserve to kind of feel like we can do whatever we want to do. Yeah. That we've got to do it a certain way to be modern or feminine or whatever. So I think we just need to redefine what being a modern woman is, what being a sexy woman is, and look at it in a new way.
Yeah. And talking about it in the way of business, and I've talked about this on the show before, when I was back in the corporate world and boardrooms and such, I confused being a strong woman with being a man, actually. Because I would sit at the boardroom like, and be all tough. And I come home to Brian and he's like, could you turn off the mail? Could you be a woman? Because I would walk in and I'm not being a strong woman. I'm actually being the male energy, and I wouldn't even realize it. We would go to a restaurant after dinner, after work, and I'd be like, yeah, table 2. He's like, could you let me get that? Can you let me be a man? So it's kind of interesting trying to find your role and realize that your role as a strong feminine woman is not being a male so much either.
They think the only way to have power is to be a male energy type. And they forget that there are other ways to communicate, because, already we're facing a lot of discrimination against women in some ways. We're moving up, and that can be threatening to people, and people have feelings about it. So, one of the things women say is we don't want people to say we're aggressive, just because we're being assertive. But maybe sometimes we're taking on this male thing and we do sound aggressive. And so then maybe you think, well, I should be able to do it. This guy just did it. But is that the right approach, right? Yeah. Don't we want everybody being a little bit better at communicating and less aggressive than thinking, gee, this is the only way to do it, and I should be able to do it because he's doing it.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned it, because we have someone coming on the show soon talking about, she's in the tech industry, and she said women often don't get taken seriously in the tech industry. How does that work? How do you begin to fit in as a woman? And I had mentioned to her that I was taking flying lessons, and it was interesting when I entered into the world of aviation, men immediately think, oh, so you're going to be my backup? Like you're the stewardess? Or I was like, no, I'm going to fly the airplane with you. And I would kind of get like, I'm the male like you. I can fly the plane. You can fly the plane. But that energy too. I mean, for one, machines are definitely more masculine in nature. They're kind of, raw. But I found that I could be a pilot and keep my feminism. Like you don't have to do one or the other. You don't have to become a male to fly an airplane. And it was getting used to that, you can enter into the realm of science or technology or even aviation, but you don't have to give up your feminine part of you.
Absolutely. And one of the tips I wanted to share with your listeners is that sometimes, when we get into that, we go for the aggressive and the you language, and all the communication experts think you communicate better when you say I, like I feel, or I'm not comfortable with that, instead of the you, which sounds kind of attacking. So, and I think that's a feminine approach, but it's works for everyone. It's not just, men don't necessarily go for their feelings the way we do, but it's a real strength in communication that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And to realize that we can find our own way. And I think that's why everyone should get their own brand of sexy book and see what works for them and how they can make their own kind of rule book without having to say, okay, I'm going to follow the feminist rule book that I think somewhere says I have to be super aggressive, or I have to go and sleep with people just to show them I'm a woman and I'm strong and I'm, modern, but that you can find really what works for you, and find that more than anything that you're respecting yourself and making sure that others respect you in both business and in dating and life.
That's so great. I do have like a free gift for your listeners if they're interested in a quiz about whether they're having trouble saying no in business and whether they're being their own brand. It's at www.yourbrandgift.com, so they can take a quiz on that. And also, I just have a quiz on my website, Your Own Brand of Sexy, if somebody's interested in whether they are being their own brand of sexy, and if not, what they can do about it. Because, it's a common problem. It's very hard when you're raised to be a people pleaser, or you're afraid of losing your job. I mean, I think that's hard in business. People aren't sure how far they can disagree with people, and they aren't sure really how to communicate their needs sometimes, even if they're sure, I don't like this, and they don't necessarily feel they have a choice, or they aren't sure how to communicate it effectively.
It's interesting you bring that up. I'm glad you did, because there's a difference between men and women in the workplace when it comes to family. I find that a lot of the men I've worked with in corporate, they have a significant other at home, a wife, to look after the kids. If something goes wrong, it usually falls on the wife's shoulders first to deal with it, usually. And the male will keep going and say, I'll get home when I can, honey, blah, blah, blah. But for the women counterparts that are in like executive positions. I knew one woman in a very high executive position whose child got very sick, and she wanted to go home to the child, and the husband was running home because he didn't have an executive job. She kind of had a higher paying job, and she felt really torn. She wanted to go be with her child, but she felt like, in my position where I'm at, I can't go deal with that. And she didn't. And I thought, well, that's just messed up, that our society is not allowed to say, well, if you're going to be an equal, you got to stay here and deal with this crap and let your, and I'm like, there's got to be balance where your family comes first, regardless if you're a man or a woman. And I find that women are sacrificing more in the business world to keep their place and not lose what they think they might lose, their position or whatever. And I find that sad.
Well, and I think that's why so many successful women say their husband makes a huge difference in their success at work. Who you marry really makes a big difference, because if he's more of an equal partner and wants to help with those kind of things, or is committed to your career as well and helping with that really makes a big difference in how successful you can be.
Yeah.
So all these women who are thinking, well, these guys who, they're feeling rejected by these guys who want you to have sex with them in a couple of dates. These aren't the guys who are going to be super attentive and understanding and want to make a good partner with you, right? So that's an important thing to remember, because I think women feel rejected and like, how am I going to find somebody, when you're just weeding out guys who aren't going to make good partners.
And here's the other, I like that you mentioned that too, because if they're not there for you on a date, they're not going to be there for you as a husband or as a partner, regardless if you marry or live together, whatever. But also, I think what the other thing is, I think some of the things we think we have to do are imagined and not really real, because in that company I told you about, very shortly thereafter, it went under. Everyone lost their job, men, women, everyone. And so where's that executive felt, I can't go be with my family? She could have been, because guess what? We went under 2 months later anyway. So, it goes to show that I think sometimes the stuff we put on ourselves of what we think society wants of us is really put on within our own mind. It's not really something she wouldn't have lost her job because, I really truly believe they wouldn't have fired her because she had to go be with her child. And I think it's something we put upon ourselves, and we have to realize that, as you said, what is best for yourself? Go within, reflect in your own heart, and see what is really best for me, my family, and myself, and going forward.
And that's the first Be Your Own Brand of Sexy guideline, is you always have a choice, because people don't see when they have a choice.
Yeah. And that's really awesome to mention that, because in life, no matter what it is, when we get in that place of stuckness, I call it like we're in a narrow mindset. It's like we see nothing outside of that field. It can feel like we have no choices, but there is a choice. And what I like about each of your chapters is you end with, okay, here's the different things we went over. Now, do you have a choice? Can you see both angles? That you always have a choice between this or this. What works best for you?
It's just sometimes it's just hard to figure out what the right choice is, or figure out how to negotiate it. But if you don't see you have one, you're not going to get to the other steps, right?
I know. How can people find out more about you? Are you still taking patients? Are they able to work with you?
Yes, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm taking patients. I'd love to work with patients, and you can contact me through my website, BeYourOwnBrandOfSexy.com, for speaking or consulting as well, and the books are available through the website. So
go get your copy today. Be Your Own Brand of Sexy. If you feel stuck in any part of your life as a woman, you can be strong in your own way without having to follow outside rules. And this book can help you. And I just want to thank you, Dr. Susan, for coming to share your great wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio.
Thank you, Christine. I loved being with you today. It was great.
Thank you.